जन्म जन्म की मैली चादर कैसे दाग छुड़ाऊं। हे पावन परमेश्वर मेरे मन ही मन शर्माऊं। निर्मल वाणी पाकर तुझसे नाम न तेरा गाया। नयन मूंद कर हे परमेश्वर कभी न तुझको ध्याया। निर्मल वाणी पाकर तुझसे नाम न तेरा गाया। नयन मूंद कर हे परमेश्वर कभी न तुझको ध्याया। मन वीणा की तारे टूटे अब क्या गीत सुनाऊं। हे पावन परमेश्वर मेरे मन ही मन शर्माऊं। मन बिना की तारे टूटे अब क्या गीत सुनाऊं। हे पावन परमेश्वर मेरे मन ही मन शर्माऊं। इन पैरों से चल कर तेरे मंदिर कभी न आया। जहाँ जहाँ हो पूजा तेरी कभी न शीश झुकाया। इन पैरों से चलकर तेरे मंदिर कभी न आया। जहाँ जहाँ हो पूजा तेरी कभी न शीश झुकाया। हे गिरधर में द्वार के आया अब क्या हार चराऊं। हे पावन परमेश्वर मेरे मन ही मन शर्माऊं। हे गिरधर मैं हार के आया अब क्या हार चढ़ाऊं, हे पावन परमेश्वर मेरे, मन ही मन शर्माऊं। तू है या परम्पर दयालु, सारा जगत संभाले। जैसा भी हूँ मैं हूँ तेरा, अपनी शरण लगा ले। तू है अपरंपार दयालु, सारा जगत संभाले। जैसा भी हूँ मैं हूँ तेरा, अपनी शरण लगा ले। छोड़ के तेरा द्वार दाता, और कहीं ना जाऊं। हे पावन परमेश्वर मेरे, मन ही मन शर्माऊं। छोड़ के तेरा द्वार दाता, और कहीं ना जाऊं। हे पावन परमेश्वर मेरे, मन ही मन शर्माऊं। छोड़ के तेरा द्वार दाता, और कहीं ना जाऊं। हे पावन परमेश्वर मेरे, मन ही मन शर्माऊं। छोड़ के तेरा द्वार दाता, और कहीं ना जाऊं। हे पावन परमेश्वर मेरे, मन ही मन शर्माऊं। छोड़ के तेरा द्वार दाता, और कहीं ना जा।
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, we are very happy to have His Holiness Guru Prasad Swami Maharaj. So I will just give a brief introduction about Maharaj. Maharaj born in USA and studied nuclear physics at Purdue University. And after becoming disenchanted with the science, he transferred to the University of Texas, where he made his contact with the Hare Krishna movement. but it was later during his military services in Panama when this encounter with ISKCON changed his life dramatically. Upon concluding his military services, Maharaj joined the pioneering group of Krishna devotees in Central America, and he attended 1976 Mayapur Vrindavan festival and was initiated by his spiritual master A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and he received his sannyas initiation in Brazil in 1982. Maharaj's major services includes administrative services and distributing BBT publications, temple president of Costa Rica Temple in 1978. In 1987, he became the member of GBC. Maharaj seeks to assist devotees cooperate in harmony personally and collectively through clear and open communication. We were very fortunate to have Maharaj Association in 2017 GBC's meeting at Ujjain, and there are a few pics. So we again have great fortune to hear from Maharaj. So let us welcome Maharaj by loudly chanting one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Haribo, Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj Ki Jai. So I'm very happy and honored to have this opportunity to address all of you today. And I hope that I can say something meaningful and that Krishna allows me to be an ongoing servant of your Guru Maharaj, who not only I, but everyone in ISKCON appreciated so much and appreciate and will continue to appreciate. First, there was this little introduction. I came to Krishna consciousness. I met the devotees in 1971 in Austin, Texas, at the University of Texas. I didn't really understand who they were, what they were doing. I actually thought they were Mongolian exchange students, because up to that point, the only people I saw with big ponytails were Mongolians. I hadn't seen any Vaishnavas. And but then I lost contact. There was no temple at that time. And I was drafted into the army, where I found a Bhagavad Gita and Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, and then my spiritual life began. And then I was stationed in Panama, so the closest temple was Costa Rica, which had just opened in early 1974. And so I began to visit, and when I got out, they recruited me as a local member. And of course, I was attracted to doing something else, but Srila Prabhupada indicated I should go back. That was in the 1976 Mayapur Vrindavan festival. And after that festival, came back, brought our deities, which are still there today. And that was basically the beginning of my spiritual life. I was engaged in Sankirtan for many years, and then I became temple president in Costa Rica, Panama, Ecuador, and then Brazil, and then regional secretary, then GBC. That was my trajectory. So as far as being the fact that I was in Latin America and in the army, I didn't have a chance in those first years to be with Srila Prabhupada. So my great opportunity came in 1976. Of course, in 1976, basically, if you weren't a GBC, a sannyasi, or a very prominent temple president, you couldn't really get any darshan of Srila Prabhupada. So I was staying on the balcony on 76 Mayapur Festival because there were no rooms available. So I was on the balcony of Prabhupada's floor. And then his secretary came out and said, "Who knows how to type?" I said, I raised my hand. And since I was the first one to raise my hand, and I was pretty good at typing, so they brought me over and I was engaged in typing the sannyas mantras for all the sannyasis that would take sannyas that year, plus some other things and few letters for Srila Prabhupada. And because I was the typist, one of the typists, I was allowed to stay right outside Srila Prabhupada's room. And that was basically my association with Srila Prabhupada, that I was able to observe so many things, and especially what I considered it a great privilege that I could see so Prabhupada how he dealt with leaders, how he dealt with older devotees. And then after that, I went back to Costa Rica and began my Sankirtan career. And in 1977, when your Guru Maharaj basically joined, was initiated, I didn't go that year, so I didn't get a chance to meet him. But in 1978, when I was able to go back to India for the second time, then, of course, in those days, I was a simple brahmachari from a very poor area of the world. And of course, India was also a poor area of the world at that time. We used to finance our trips by bringing watches and cassette players and sell them on the black market, and that would pay for our ticket. I would always come with 20 watches, and anyway, those are some of the ways we could. So as a brahmachari, I didn't have much money, so I was in Calcutta, and of course, we know the 3 Albert Road temple, there's only one room, and so I was a little bit in anxiety because I didn't have, in those days, no brahmachari could afford to take a taxi to Mayapur. And there even weren't that many taxis available to go to Mayapur. So we had to wait for transport. So I came and I didn't know where to stay. And so Bhakti Charu Maharaj came to the temple. He had a little flat nearby. And so I met him and he said, "So where are you staying?" The first thing, like always, Maharaj was always concerned about the welfare, the well-being, the happiness of the devotees. And I was just some insignificant brahmachari from some south of the southern part of the Americas. But he took so much care, and he said, "Please come and stay with us." That was your Guru Maharaj and Sarvabhavana Prabhu. And so I stayed there for several days. And from that point on, as long as he had that flat, I would always go and stay with him. And I was so happy because I found in Bhakti Charu Maharaj someone completely immersed in the mode of goodness, in his actions, in his dealings, everything that he did. It was just so wonderful. And he was always so caring to me, although, he was a sannyasi, I was a simple brahmachari. He would always get up, "Do you want some tea? Do you want this? Do you want that?" Always concerned. And he had such an important mission of translating Srila Prabhupada's books into the Bengali. It was, a monumental task. Of course, Sarvabhavana Prabhu, they were both working on it. But, it seemed like Sarvabhavana Prabhu, he had so many other things to do. And I just saw his relentless dedication to that translation. I was amazed. I would sit and watch him. But he, every 20, 30 minutes, he would say, "Do you need something?" can I do something for you? Actually, most of our sannyasis at that time, many of them were very heavy. They sometimes instilled fear in your heart, like Guru Kripa Maharaj or Yashodanandan Maharaj, or even Hridayananda Maharaj, Tamal Krishna Maharaj. They were all like so heavy, and they were heavy. They were great preachers, but it wasn't so easy to get along with them. And I had met Lokanath Maharaj in 1976, and he was so different. He actually took time to speak with me. But then when I met His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, I was just amazed how such a wonderful advanced devotee could be so kind and sympathetic to someone like myself. And so then, every chance, even when it was possible to just go directly from the airport sometimes there was an arrangement for a bus, I would always stay in Calcutta. And then when Bhakti Charu Maharaj wasn't there anymore, he invited me to take prasadam with him at the house of Chaitanya Prabhu. And he said, so whenever you come, you stay here with Chaitanya Prabhu in my room. And I just felt so amazed that here is this wonderful devotee, just so concerned about myself and everyone else. And I was amazed about myself more than anyone else, because I felt so, such an insignificant person. I wasn't, at that time, I wasn't really, I was a temple president or a Sankirtan devotee, but I'd had no big position. But he treated me as if I were a GBC sannyasi. I felt like, when I was with him, I felt like a king, although I didn't want to feel like a king, but he made me feel like a king. And it was just so amazing. Of course, myself being in Latin America, and Bhakti Charu Maharaj being, in India, at that time, much more in India. Of course, later on, he became a very prominent international figure. So after I became the GBC of the area that I'm presently GBC of, which is Mexico, Central America, and basically the top northern part of Latin America. So I heard that Bhakti Charu Maharaj was, I think it was in Houston or Dallas, I can't remember. And so I called him and I said, could you come and visit us in Mexico? And he said, yes. I mean, I was amazed because he changed his schedule just to come and be there for 3 days and to bless the devotees. The devotees felt so happy because we're kind of, my whole zone is pretty much off the beaten path of leaders and traveling preachers. It's like very rare. And to get somebody on the stature of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, especially just to come at an ordinary time and at a moment's notice. And he came, he stayed, and I remember he chastised me because we had a deity of Srila Prabhupada, which was, I was keeping in the office, but I didn't have, I put Prabhupada on some cushions and, waiting we were fixing Srila Prabhupada's room. And because Prabhupada came to that Mexico temple 2 times. And while I was there, then your Guru Maharaj noticed that Prabhupada was like pretty much on the same level as the seat I was sitting on. So I'll never forget this, because he was the only person I know who could chastise with a smile. That he smiled at me, but the look he gave me, he smiled and just kind of chuckled a little bit. Then he looked at Prabhupada and he looked at me, and I immediately understood. It was like no words, but it was just you know, as so many devotees have commented in the last few weeks from his departure to now, how he was so amazingly just a gentleman in every way. I mean, even in chastisement. Of course, I saw him also chastise a few disciples, especially when he was in. I used to visit North Carolina regularly, and of course, as many of you know, or maybe all of you know, that was like his U.S. headquarters when he first started coming to the U.S. And he had a couple of disciples there with a energy bar business, and so I would see him regularly in North Carolina. We would take prasadam together, and one of his disciples, who I won't mention his name, but he was there serving Maharaj. He was a Sankirtan devotee from the U.S. And so I saw him. He just finished washing Maharaj's clothes and ironing them, and then he put them on the carpet to fold them. And Maharaj came out and said, "I gave you Brahman initiation. No, I'm trying to teach you how to be a Brahmin, and you're acting like a Shudra. No, how can you put the clothes on the floor? Now you have to wash them again. Now you have to iron them again." And so I was amazed because every interaction I had. But then I remembered what Srila Prabhupada said, that which Prabhupada said in many occasions, that someone who doesn't chastise a disciple is doing them is being violent, is doing a disservice. That chastising the disciple is a very, very important part of their growth and feeling the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And one thing I forgot to say, when I used to stay with Maharaj in Calcutta or Kolkata, I always felt like I'm happier being here with Maharaj than I would be if I were staying in the temple with the deities. Because as Srila Prabhupada mentions in his translation of second chapter, first canto of the Bhagavatam, Anashtaparishvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, that the devotee is the manifestation, the personified Bhagavata, and also the personality of God, servitor personality of Godhead. And I always felt that being with devotees, and especially with Maharaj, I was gaining so much more by his darshan than taking darshan of the deities or being with so many devotees. I learned so many things from not necessarily that he told me so many things, but his behavior, his demeanor. I saw, many times I have to admit, I've complained to the Bhakti Shastri course people that I've seen many devotees come and take Bhakti Shastri, then they come back and they do less service and they're more puffed up. So, because they feel like they have some knowledge. So I've always tried to emphasize that a good part of the Bhakti Shastri course should be cleaning the kitchen, cleaning the bathroom, and embodying the third verse of the Shikshastakam. And that's what I felt. I felt like in your Guru Maharaj's presence, the personification of that verse. Someone who is friendly to everyone. I wrote a letter to a few disciples that I know, Krishna Balaram Prabhu, Kamlesh Krishna Prabhu, and a couple other disciples that I know, Chandrasekhar Acharya. And in that letter, I said that I saw in Bhakti Charu Maharaj the personification of Lord Kapila Dev's explanation of what is a sadhu, that agyata shatru, that he had no enemy. I've never really met, I met usually very powerful preachers and managers and people who have a managerial or inspirational position, they also have a lot of opposition. And certainly even Srila Prabhupada had a few people who opposed him. And certainly Bhakti Charu Maharaj probably had some people who might have opposed him, but I never met any of them. But everybody felt so comfortable. Everybody felt so wonderful in his association. And I always felt that too. And one time I remember Ekadashi in Mayapur, and of course he was fasting, Nirjal Ekadashi, and I wasn't, because I always had a problem with not taking water, that it had caused physical problems for my intestine. So I went to break the fast with him. He invited me to come and break fast with him. And he was just, he was like, there was about 10 senior devotees. He was going around giving them the mixture of milk and sugar and water. And it was just so amazing that how he had that attitude and how everyone loved him, because he, in our disciplic succession, we have some of the greatest scholars on earth: Jiva Goswami, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur. And we also have devotees who embody the principles of Shikshastikam to the fullest degree: Gorkishore Das Babaji, and all the, they weren't such great scholars, but they were the embodiment. But I saw in Bhakti Charu Maharaj both these things, that such wonderful Vaishnava qualities, and at the same time, a learned, although he didn't flaunt his learning, he didn't show off his learning, he didn't, actually, I always felt like, he's so busy, he doesn't have time to learn a lot of verses and everything, like some devotees are like that. But then one day, I was with him in his room, and he just started spurting out all these verses, and especially being so many of the songs of the acharyas, which he knew by heart. And he had such deep and wonderful realizations. We just stayed there for like 2 hours, and he was just speaking on these bhajans, and I could see how they had entered his heart and permeated his being. And it was just amazing how, some of my god brothers would say to me that, because I was always very busy and had kind of a problematic zone, and they would say, you have to get more into bhajan, and so that you can handle your area of responsibility, which is, my zone has 3 of the most violent countries in the world, 4 of the countries that have the largest numbers of kidnappings. And, so it's sometimes very demanding, but I always felt such great peace, and how I saw that your Guru Maharaj would always, whoever came in, would always feel so comfortable. The last time I was with him was just now in Mayapur in February. And actually we had a plan based on my desire, not his desire maybe, but my desire, to do a Navadvip Parikram, just the 2 of us. And the first time I said, could we do that together? He said, well, if I do that, I'll probably have about 100 disciples coming with me. And I said, no problem. I just want to do it with you. Whatever condition, 100, 1,000, 10,000, whatever you want. And then the next year, we couldn't do it. Then the next year, that was about 4 years ago. So the next year, about 3 years ago. So I said, so Maharaj, when are we going to do that? And he said, yes, but let's do it just you and I, no one else. And so let's do it next year at Gaur Purnim time, which was 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, he wrote me just a few weeks before, and he said, I won't be able to do it. I'm coming to Mayapur late. And afterwards, it will be too hot. So let's do it at at the midterm meeting time. But then he had something that happened at the midterm meeting time. And then he said, okay, let's do it next midterm meeting time, which would have been 2018. But then something happened and he couldn't do it. So then we planned to do it now in just before the Mayapur meeting in 2019. So then I made my reservations to get to arrive in Kolkata like a week before. And then I wrote him and I said, so Maharaj, I'm arriving on such and such a date. Then I didn't get an answer back for a few days. And then when I had arrived in Mayapur, he said, they've called a meeting for some of the India leaders and I have to be there. Radhanath Swami is expecting me. So he said, definitely, without a doubt, no matter what happens, we're going to do it in October. And that would have been this coming October. So when he left, I was feeling, of course, I can't say I was feeling like Srinivasacharya, but I was feeling the same feelings of, this is going to happen, then some circumstance comes, then you're going to get this association, and then it doesn't happen, and then this, we just went on and on. And anyway, so I never got to do it. Maybe I can meet some of you and we can do a Navadik Pradikram together. Some of you can guide me, and because one thing I found with Tamal Krishna Maharaj and especially with Bhakti Charu Maharaj, the quality of his disciples. I've been very impressed. Of course, I'm impressed with so many wonderful devotees in ISKCON, but I always found that especially Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Bhakti Charu Maharaj's disciples are very, very special. Very, very special. So I'm sorry, I think I said 2019, but 2020. It was supposed to be 2020, the last time we were going to go. So I feel the few disciples of Maharaj that I've known throughout the years, and of course, one of them came to work with me, Krishna Balaram Prabhu. He came to work with me in Mexico, and then of course, then he ended up in Tawako. But I just saw so many wonderful qualities in every one of the disciples that I've seen. So much of a gentlemanly behavior. When I met Kamlesh Krishna Prabhu, I was so impressed by, his demeanor, and I saw a reflection of my dear godbrother Bhakti Charu Maharaj in all the disciples that I've known. And of course, there is one other disciple, and I just remembered her, and I'm going to have to write her. So anyway, that's my interaction. Although repeatedly very brief, because I never, except for in the GBC meetings, and of course during GBC meetings, everybody's so busy, and what to speak of Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Having so many disciples coming for darshan, so many people coming, and important and influential people from India and especially from Bengal. And I always felt bad trying to disturb him, but I did it anyway because I valued so much those moments of association, and with someone of your Guru Maharaj's caliber. I always remember. And I experienced, of course, not to the fullest degree, but I experienced what the Bhagavatam says, Tulayama labanapi naswargam napumar bhagavat sangi sangasya, that when you associate with a devotee, even for a moment, a devotee who is a Bhagavat Sangha, who is a Bhagavat Sangi, who is a associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then I just felt that. I felt really pleased and happy inside, and a relief and a surge of bhakti in my own consciousness whenever I was with him. And I'm not saying that to, because you're his disciples and I want to say something nice. I'm saying it because I felt it. And, I read through so many wonderful eulogies of Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and every one of them without fail expressed a perfect gentleman, a wonderful servant of Srila Prabhupada, so dedicated, so wonderful. And so I wanted to mention something that I was meditating on in the days after his departure, how, because I heard one disciple express that, why did Krishna not allow our Guru Maharaj to leave in Vrindavan or Mayapur, or at least in Ujjain? And I meditated on that for a little while. And my realization is that Srila Prabhupada consulted with one of his godbrothers, a few years before his departure. He said, some devotees have mentioned that I should not be going back to the West, because what will happen if I leave my body in the West? And I was amazed that this godbrother, who was Prabhupada's older godbrother, said that wherever you leave your body, that will be just like Vrindavan, because you have done what no one else has been able to do to fulfill the prophecy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu of every town and village, which many of us thought was a metaphor, and that it was actually meant to mean wherever Mahaprabhu reached, or at that time. And it was just like just like we say sometimes 64,000 of this, or some big numbers, or Rupa Goswami saying that one should have 10 million ears to be able to hear the glories of the holy name, to capture that nectar. So sometimes they seem very, very exaggerated, but this was what Prabhupada was told. And then Srila Prabhupada, in his last months, basically his last month, he wanted to go to New Vrindavan. In 1976, Srila Prabhupada was, after the Rath Yatra, he was starting to, his age was catching up to him, his constant traveling, and he was like feeling a little weak. He had an extraordinary excess of mucus. So when he was coming down the elevator, some of the devotees said, Prabhupada, maybe you should rest for a month. And Prabhupada walked out of the elevator, looked at the devotees, and he said, just like Arjuna, I want to die on the battlefield. And then he walked a little farther and he said, and you should also do the same. And so Prabhupada had that desire that I don't want to leave anything unfulfilled. And even in his very weak condition, he wanted to show the importance. That's how I understood his going to Gita Nagari, to show the importance of giving one's life in the preaching mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is what, when I reflected on Maharaj coming, even defiantly saying that we should not be afraid of this COVID, we should not be sitting in Vrindavan just thinking about ourselves, and therefore I'm making this trip. And he made the trip, and to me, he defeated the COVID, because he personified what Srila Prabhupada was willing to personify. Somehow or another, because Srila Prabhupada was the Acharya of ISKCON, Krishna brought him back to Vrindavan and all the disciples came. But Bhakti Charu Maharaj was, was inspired by Krishna. I don't want to say inspired, but as Krishna does so many times, he puts his devotee in a difficult position to illustrate what should be our consciousness. And that consciousness, I just have to turn something off here, making noise. What should be our consciousness? Our consciousness should be serve the mission of Guru Maharaj in spite of all difficulty, in spite of all danger. Srila Prabhupada said that without taking risk, one cannot advance in devotional service. One cannot become a pure devotee. So he came out of concern. He came out of compassion. And he was willing to accept that responsibility of coming and giving and taking a risk. And it turned out to be a big risk. But to me, he became the personification of the example that we should not fear whatever Krishna arranges for us, for our life, for our preaching, for our service, for our understanding, for our advancement, and ultimately for how we leave this world. Just like Srila Prabhupada in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita in verse 24 and 27 in the purport, he emphasizes, because it's speaking about a yogi, how a yogi is able to determine when they leave, and therefore there is no inauspicious moment for a yogi who's fully fixed in transcendental consciousness. What to speak of the transcendental consciousness of a devotee who's solely dedicated to Srila Prabhupada. And thus I feel that Maharaj, always wanting to personify Srila Prabhupada's desires, was chosen by Krishna to give this example. Anyway, that's one thing, because his, how he came to Krishna consciousness, how he was initiated. No one in this movement, as far as I know, even it was considered extraordinary by the godbrothers of Srila Prabhupada that he got first and second initiation. He got them at the same time. That was extraordinary. What to speak of getting both, and then a few months later getting sannyas. That's like pretty much, as far as I know, unprecedented even in Gaudiya Math, and what to speak of in ISKCON. Because in Gaudiya Math you had people coming from, very saintly background, and still. So for Srila Prabhupada to do something like that is something amazing. And therefore, how a devotee leaves this world is perfectly understood by understanding how Srila Prabhupada, Parikshit Maharaj, he himself said, this couldn't have happened by karma or some other means. I could never have done what I did under ordinary circumstances. Therefore, I know this is the intervention of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So anyway, that particular aspect, that's how I saw it, and I wanted to share that with all of you. As I don't know if I'm right or not, but that's definitely how I feel. That he had so much the mood of Srila Prabhupada, that he had that mood of, even in the midst of the danger of leaving this world in a foreign place, meaning Srila Prabhupada, when he came to Gainesville in 1971, I think it was, he gave a lecture, and he said, here we are in this remote corner of the world. And of course, all the professors, and they said, what? This is Gainesville, Florida, this is USA. But for Prabhupada, Vrindavan was the real place, and here in the US, some remote corner of the world. So for someone to go to the remote corner of the world and risk giving up this world to preach and teach Krishna consciousness and give an example, to me, was an extraordinary event. So I see that here on the electronic, that Prem Avatar Prabhu said we can post questions. And I see, here's a question from Sundar Damodar Prabhu. And we cannot express our gratitude to Srila Prabhupada disciples. So much anxiety, hardship, struggle to follow in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj, we are having fear to lose all of your physical association. I would say, how can we may not lose you the experiences, commitment, and all the realization you have in your heart? Well, I don't know how much I have, but just by seeing the devotees and the fact that some of the I also saw in Bhakti Charu Maharaj's leaving how Prabhupada takes some of his dearmost disciples, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Sridhar Swami, who was such a wonderful devotee, my dear friend, and all the devotees who have departed, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and now Bhakti Charu Maharaj, how Krishna takes them, the dearest people, so that we will, exactly what the question here is, so that we will look to these devotees, the devotees who remain, and gather from them the essence of devotional service. Because once all of Srila Prabhupada's disciples leave, and I would especially say the disciples of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, I think will be the caretakers of ISKCON, because he was a caretaker of ISKCON. And I see that he has instilled that within you. So I would say that realization is there in every class that Maharaj gave, in every bhajan that he sung, and in the association of so many wonderful devotees in this movement. The second part to that question, please share your realization in long practice of Krishna consciousness. I can try to do that, but I don't think I can do that in 17 minutes, but maybe we can have another session, or I could write something to, if somebody was interested, to Sundar Damodar Prabhu or anyone else. Please enlighten us what mistakes we may commit in the practice of Krishna consciousness, so that we do not commit and then learn. It's inevitable that a devotee must make mistakes. Parikshit Maharaj made a mistake. Of course, that was inspired by Yoga Maya. But in one sense, even for the newest devotee, Yoga Maya acts not so directly, but in a special way. Because when you commit a mistake, the lesson becomes very, very much ingrained in your heart and in your consciousness. If somebody else makes a mistake, then we tend to think, oh, yeah, that devotee wasn't very advanced, or we have a tendency to directly or indirectly criticize. So, so what can I say? We learn by observing others, and whatever we can't learn, we'll commit a mistake. Prabhupada sent devotees out after being in the movement for 6 weeks to open a temple, or 2 months, or 3 months, or 6 months, and he knew they would make mistakes. Of course, in India, Prabhupada was a little more careful and a little more severe when somebody made a mistake, but he still understood that through mistakes, you learn things. Just like I always tell devotees, if they want to study, because our whole Shastra is based on questions. So if you want to learn something, ask questions about it. Then it will stick within you. That which you want to know, that's what you should. That's why Prabhupada wanted questions at the end of the class, because when somebody answers your question, it sticks with you. But if you just hear something, it can easily disappear. But if you ask a question, it sticks in your heart. That's one realization that I've had. And then another question. Oh, no, that's not a question. Oh, here. What do you believe was the final lesson that Bhakti Charu Maharaj taught us as he was preparing to leave this world? Well, of course, I just gave you one aspect of that, but another aspect is that he taught, I don't know, I think Bhakti Charu Maharaj was preparing to leave this world since the departure of Srila Prabhupada. And just out of, because Srila Prabhupada says in one purport in the 28th chapter of the 4th canto, that a disciple should be very willing to carry out the mission of the spiritual master, or he should die together with the spiritual master. So, and I see a double meaning in that. One part of that meaning, one part of that means that one, to not follow the indications and the orders of the spiritual master is like being dead. But another aspect of it is that we have to do this. In spite of the pain, the lamentation, the difficulty, which of course many devotees have already externalized to all of you, that these are the immediate emotions, but these instill within us a sense of becoming very attached. So I think that everything in Bhakti Charu Maharaj is, he was so attached to Prabhupada that he could have left this world the day that Prabhupada left, or the day after, or 2 days after. But his sense of duty, his understanding of what Prabhupada wanted to him, his whole life to me from the time that Prabhupada left, which was shortly after his entering directly into this movement, that whole time, the last, 44 years have been a constant sense of duty, where his sentiment was, I want to be with Srila Prabhupada. But he was with Srila Prabhupada in living Srila Prabhupada's instructions. So I feel that he's been teaching us for the last 44 years how to adhere to Srila Prabhupada's instructions, how to be a servant of this movement. Because there's nothing else. There's nothing like this movement in the world. Srila Prabhupada created something very unique in a spiritual movement where we are expected to accept a body. Generally, you expect your Guru Maharaj, and that's it. That's the Vedic tradition. We're cooperating and living together and reviving the times of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when there were multiple gurus, and they were all working together. So anyway, I'll go to the next question. Guru Maharaj used to say, become a good devotee rather than a big devotee. How can I practically achieve this, as I see many services make me feel that I am a big devotee? Now I'm remembering by that question, I think it was Ravindra Swarup Prabhu that said Bhakti Charu Maharaj personified this particular dichotomy, or this particular paradox of two opposing things in one place. And that is, he was so humble and so service-minded. At the same time, such a great personality, such a revered disciple of Srila Prabhupada, such a revered GBC, such a prominent devotee and preacher, but it never went to his head. So I would say, how can we do this? Just follow in the footsteps of your Guru Maharaj. Prabhupada said to Pridayananda Maharaj and Satsvarup Maharaj when they took sannyas, he said, now everyone will call you Maharaj. but you should remember, I am the greatest fool. So that's the first instruction that Krishna gives to Arjuna, Ashochas Anvashochas Tvam. That's how Mahaprabhu begins his Shikshastikam, lower than a blade of grass. That's how he addressed the sannyas. Who can be a greater personality than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? But when he addressed the Mayavad sannyasis, he said, my Guru Maharaj said that I'm a fool and I have no ability to understand Vedanta. So here's the example from Mahaprabhu down to your Guru Maharaj, that we have to accept that Krishna gives us this position. Just how did Srila Prabhupada manage being the Acharya? And sometimes he had to tell people, I'm the Acharya, because we were so ignorant. That Prabhupada had to say, I'm the Acharya, you're the servant. So it's a great challenge. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur addressed it by saying, you see this big fool sitting on a big chair like a zoo animal. But so I put my case before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who said, Jati dekatari kaha Krishna Upadesh, amara gyaya guru anyataradesh. You must become guru. So that's how we do it. We always remember I'm a fool, but we have to become guru. So that's a challenge that we all have to accept. And here's another question. I feel that disciples may not have practiced properly. Guru Maharaj did have to suffer our sins and the last moments in the hospital. Please help us understand this. That is a normal sentiment, and there's definitely truth in it. There's no doubt. But it's not just like that, because Maharaj, his profile was much beyond the profile of a guru with his disciples. He had an international profile. He had everybody was looking to him in so many ways, and so I see his departure as an instruction. Certainly, all of us with our lackings become a bit of a burden. But that burden, especially for a devotee who's fully surrendered to Krishna, just like Prabhupada said, the three things I did wrong, three mistakes I may have made, was accepting too many disciples, opening too many temples, and installing too many deities. But of course, Prabhupada did all those things out of compassion. And so, although Krishna may allow his dear devotee to suffer to some degree from the improper activities of or lackings or shortcomings of his disciples, no, that's not the main factor. The main factor in whatever happens in their lives is giving an example to others so that they can become inspired and carry on their Krishna consciousness. That's how I see it. And it says, can I share my letter that I wrote? What I'll do is, because I'll have to look it up, I will send it to Prem Avatar Prabhu, and so he can share it with anyone who wants to see the letter I wrote to some of your God brothers who I know and are very fond of, and so I can share that, of course. And then we see if there's any other question here in the last couple of minutes we have. Can I share some of the realizations when you were going through some very difficult situations in preaching Krishna consciousness and could feel the reciprocation of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna? Well, I can try to. Of course, One time I remember we were in El Salvador during the revolution. It was about 30 years ago. And all of a sudden, there was, big firefight broke out, guns shooting every direction. And we all immediately fell to the ground. And everyone was chanting the Nrsimha mantra automatically. And I felt that Krishna inspired us. On another occasion in Colombia, we were doing Hari Nam, and so I looked, I saw this car pull up, and knowing, I just saw this car pull up, and I felt the inspiration in my heart to just tell everybody, get down. And then all the devotees were chanting. I said, everybody get down and chant Namaste Narasimhaya. And everybody did. And about 20 seconds later, all of these, from that car, people jumped out, started shooting machine guns and killing everybody on the other side of us. That I guess there was someone there that they were after. And no devotees were hurt, and everybody got up, and myself and everybody felt that Srila Prabhupada and Paramatma had personally protected us. And I've had many situations like that because I do live in kind of a violent zone. But in difficult situations, I can say that when I was doing Sankirtan, every day I felt the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, because especially doing Sankirtan in some places, it was so difficult. And especially if you didn't have the right consciousness. And I feel that doing Sankirtan and book distribution is the one thing that has brought the reciprocation or the presence of Srila Prabhupada and Paramatma and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu present in my mind. They become a constant meditation. And there's probably other things, but I can't remember them right off the bat. There may be time for one more question. No. This is, may I please request you to show some light on destiny of those souls who have never done Vapu Seva to the spiritual master. What they have is try to attempt to do Vani Seva. Well, I can say that from my own personal experience, because I never did a personal service, although I saw Srila Prabhupada, and by the grace of Brahmananda Prabhu and Achyutananda Prabhu, who were sannyasis at that time, I had the opportunity to go into Prabhupada's room when he wasn't giving darshan. But my mind went so blank that I couldn't think of, I had all these questions that I wanted to ask, but I never wrote them down. And I thought, if I ever get the chance to speak with Srila Prabhupada, but then when I got in the room, I couldn't think of anything. And so Prabhupada just lightly smiled and said, so what is your service? I said, Sankirtan. He said, so do that all your life. And that was it. So I never got a chance to do, and the majority of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, and many of them who are now leaders in the movement, they may have sat in a class, as I sat in many classes. They may have gone on a morning walk, or they may not have even seen Prabhupada. I know several of my godbrothers who never saw Srila Prabhupada physically, and they're wonderful devotees. So the Vani is so important. The Vapu is to bring us closer to the spiritual master, but in such effulgent personalities as Bhakti Charu Maharaj, the instructions and the indications through his examples, his service, and everything is so prominent that I can't see that that anyone who didn't get the chance to do Vapu or much Vapu will be in any way, have any kind of a disadvantage. I've seen that many devotees who have become more, done more very intense services are some of the devotees who never had the Vapu, and many of the devotees who had Vapu association of Srila Prabhupada, they were so devastated by it because they had so much personal interaction that many of them were not able to continue their service for many years. And so sometimes Vapu can affect us in that way. So we have to be really, really, really focused on the Vani, on the instructions and the example of the spiritual master. Of course, part of the Vapu is also the example. That's Vapu, that's the body. And by the wonders of technology, we have hundreds or maybe thousands of recordings of your Guru Maharaj. I personally, after his departure, have started watching many of them and getting relishing them. So that's a Vapu Seva, of appreciating the Vapu, or that presence of the spiritual master, giving direction, giving instruction, and inspiring us. So some devotees have saying, please bless me. My blessings probably are not so wonderful, but whatever they're worth, they're certainly there. And more than anything, I think that you've already got so many blessings. I always tell the devotees, the blessings are not some electromagnetic energies that float around and we shoot them at someone, but the blessings are all those instructions, indications, as Narottam Das Thakur says, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavat Gita. These 5 sources, the Guru, the Vaishnavas, the Supreme Lord, the Bhagavatam, and the Gita are inundating our consciousness with so many blessings. We just have to open our hearts and our consciousness to absorb them properly. So now the time is up, and I really appreciate this opportunity. If I can be of service, as many devotees have said, I'm perfectly willing, although not very capable, but very willing to do so, and in whatever capacity I can. Please, if I can serve you in any way, let me know, and I'll be happy to do so.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much for your wonderful association to all of us, and we express our heartfelt gratitude to Your Holiness for enlightening us that how Guru Maharaj was so loving in his daily dedication to translate his Srila Prabhupada books, and you narrated very pastime about how he was concerned to everyone, his chastisement pastime, and so many qualities you narrated, how he was the perfect gentleman, he was the perfect servant of Srila Prabhupada. And you told that how the duty of a spiritual master is to chastise disciple, else he is doing injustice to his service. And you gave a nice vision that how Guru Maharaj defeated COVID as he did what Srila Prabhupada, as per the mood of Srila Prabhupada. And you very nicely answered the question that how we should remain humble while taking the prominent services. We should follow in the footsteps of our Guru Maharaj. And you told that how Sankirtan and book distribution has brought the direct reciprocation from Srila Prabhupada and Krishna in your life. And the the only instruction you got from Srila Prabhupada about Sankirtan and book distribution. So we are very thankful for narrating all these pastimes, and we have few requests, like you told that Navdeep Parikrama. So we back whenever you give us opportunity, we will be very happy to have Navdeep Parikrama with you. And we can have another session, as you told that sharing your realizations from last so many years of practice. And we request Your Holiness to visit Ujjain whenever the situation is good. And we beg for your blessings to empower us so that we can follow in the footsteps and teachings and become the loyal servant of Srila Prabhupada and continue to serve in the mission of Srila Prabhupada ISKCON, dedicate our whole life. So we beg for your blessings and mercy. So we thanks Maharaj by loudly chanting one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. His Holiness Guru Prasad Swami Maharaj ki Jai.
Srila
Sadguru Shri
Prabhupada ki, Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj ki jai.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.